In June 3, 2012, at Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport, Abuja, Nigeria, Dana Air Flight 992 was a scheduled domestic flight from Abuja to Lagos. The plane was McDonnell Douglas MD-83. There were 147 passengers and 6 crew members on board the flight. Captain was a Peter Waxton, 55, who had a total 18,116 flight hours, including 7,466 hours in the MD-80. The flight started to taxi at 2:40 p.m. The flight took off from Abuja at 2:58 p.m. and climbed towards its cruising altitude of 26,000 feet, 17 minutes after takeoff. The pilots noticed an abnormality on the left engine and started to discuss the problem. But the captain later said that he just wanted to get home to Lagos. The first officer then asked the captain if he should call the engineer to analyze the problem, but the captain refused and stated that he and the first officer can figure out the cause of the problem themselves. The captain then asked the first officer if one of the ground crews had tampered with the panel near the plane's rear door. The MD-83 continued to Lagos with the pilots discussing the problem they were facing. They noticed differences in the EPR value of the engines and that there was no response on the left engine when they advanced the throttles forward. The pilots considered the left engine inoperable and began their descent to Lagos. With the failure of the left engine, the pilots should have looked at their QRH and followed procedures accordingly, but they didn't. The captain ordered the first officer to increase the rate of the descent, but the first officer refused and stated that the gradual descent was far more effective in maintaining their altitude. The MD-83 was then cleared for an approach to runway 18 liters by Lagos ATC. The crew later asked for an approach to runway 18R, in which it was approved. At 3:31 p.m., the crew finally declared that both engines were not responding to any throttle response and the captain took control from the first officer. Though the left engine was inoperative, neither pilot issued a mayday call. Soon the right engine started to fail and the crew switched off several systems on the right engine. The captain was still calm and did not declare an emergency. At 3:35 p.m., as the crew received several instructions of headings and radar vectors by ATC, they began to worry about their condition. They started the pre-landing checklist, including extending the spread brakes and flaps. The engine problem became compounded as thrust was required to continue the final approach. The first officer then asked the pilot if both engines were operative, in which the captain responded negative. With both engines failed to produce any commanded thrust, a call was never made for the checklist, both normal and emergency, throughout the flight, and no indication was found that the QRH was consulted. At 3:41 p.m., the crew finally declared an emergency about the engines getting no response from the throttles as the MD-83 was 11 nautical miles from the airport. The crew later extended the flaps to 30 degrees as at the time the situation seemed to be under control. The crew asked the passengers to prepare for landing. Few minutes later, the altitude warning sounded while the captain stated that he had the runway in sight. The flight crew then retracted the landing gear and the flaps as the captain stated he didn't want to stall the plane. The engine problem became compounded as thrust was required to continue the final approach. The MD-83's tail section struck an incomplete building, 2 trees and 3 other ground structures. The tail then separated and the rest of the aircraft crashed into a building in the Ijuishaga neighborhood near the airport and exploded. All 153 passengers on board the plane and 6 people on the ground were killed. The Nigerian AIB and the NTSB concluded that the fuel feeder lines that attached to the number 5 fitting in the engines were both fractured flush. The fractures caused the fuel leaks, which calloused the engines to be unresponsive to the throttle commands. The investigators also included the probable cause of the crash as the inappropriate omission of the use of the checklist and the pilot's inability to appreciate the severity of the power problem, and their subsequent to land at a nearest suitable airfield. Lack of situational awareness, inappropriate decisions making and poor airmanship were also factors in the crash. Records showed that in 2009, Captain Waxton was suspended by the USA FAA for misdemeanors related to a heavy landing and fixing panels that were neither entered in the plane's logbook or reported. The revalidated license to him by the NCAA was stamped but not signed by any NCAA official. The Nigerian AIB reported that there was no documented information that the pilots performed the mandatory CRM training. In memory of the 159 people that lost their lives on the disaster of Dana Air Flight 992 in June 3, 2012, Dana Air has the worst refund history. Till date, Dana Air continued to get worse due to the poor management and lack of aircraft maintenances. This flight, which its door has been rattling, pulled off during mid-flight. This comes after the airline's plane crash-landed into a bush in Omagua, Port Harcourt, Rivers State. As usual, the poor management blames the crash on bad weather caused by the rain. Dana Air is the worst airline in Africa, and if you value your life, you shouldn't use such airline. Listen to what one of the anonymous staff said during a closed-door interview.
That aircraft had always been giving faults from time. And personally, I have had a colleague that flew with that aircraft to Abuja. And when the aircraft got there, it got spoiled. So they couldn't bring it back. They had to leave it there, fix it, then send another set of people to go there and then bring it back. And they actually loaded passengers to bring it back.
When you say another set, you mean another crew, right?
Yes, another set of crew.
Okay.
There was another instance of when it went to Uyo. It went to Uyo, and then it plugged forth there, and it took them another 5-6 hours to fix it. And then after they fixed it, they still used it on a complete trip. When I say complete trip, they didn't come back straight to Lagos. They took it from Uyo to Abuja. Abuja, they came back to Uyo. They went back to Abuja before coming back to Lagos. Yes. Yesterday, before the thing crashed, he was not supposed to leave Lagos at all, because there are regulations that state that aircraft should be checked and then engineers should ensure that it is fit to fly. And then that day, it was proved that it was not fit to take off on that journey at all. The station manager also said that I shouldn't go on that journey, but the management said they should use it for that trip.
Thank you for watching, and please don't forget to subscribe, share this video, comment and like this video to support in discovery.